Today we hear very exciting news for all of us. In each of the readings, all three of the readings, we hear how willing God is to give us forgiveness. He created each and every one of us out of love, loves us dearly, and only wishes that we return that love to Him. In the first reading, we hear about Moses is up on the mountain, and the people of Israel have fallen back to their old ways. They've melted down their gold, created an idol to worship. But because Moses pleads with him to forgive the people, God gives them forgiveness. In the second reading, we hear about Paul talking about the life that he led, the fact that he prosecuted Christians for their beliefs. But when he went to God for forgiveness, he was forgiven and received great power. And the gospel has a series of parables, stories about how God is willing, not only willing to receive sinners, but rejoices when they seek forgiveness. The only thing that we need to remember, besides the fact that we need to seek forgiveness from God and then be willing to forgive ourselves because God has forgiven us, if He in all His might can forgive us, then we should also give forgiveness to ourselves, to those around us, family, friends, anyone who has sinned against us. But we need to also take into account and remember not to be like the prodigal son and wait and spend a long period of time before we come to that realization that we need God, that we need our family, we need our friends, and seek that reconciliation. There was a young boy, Danny, who was preparing for bed. His mother went upstairs with him. He knelt down beside his bed, started to say his prayers. If I should die before I wake, if I should die, then he jumped up, ran back downstairs. He was gone for a few minutes, came back up, knelt by his bed again, and resumed his prayers, finished. When he finished his prayers, his mother started gently chastising him for getting up and leaving his prayers and questioning, "What did you do? Why did you get up in the middle of saying your prayers?" And he told her, "I had to go back downstairs. I took Ted's toy soldiers and stood them all on their heads this morning, this afternoon before I was coming up for bed. I thought that it would be funny to see him get up in the morning and find them that way. But then when I was saying my prayers, I thought, it won't be funny if I should die before I wake." He said, "I realize there are a lot of things that, if we're going to continue living, are funny, but if we should die before we wake, they're not going to be that funny. So I set them all of his soldiers back on their feet, because I didn't want that to happen, didn't want him to see that if I should die before I wake." His mother was very touched by all of this, kissed him goodnight, tucked him in. And on the way downstairs, she started reflecting on the words that her son had spoken to her and thinking how much better the world would be if we, adults, everyone, when we start to say our prayers, would reflect on the things that we've done and correct some wrong that we have done, either to a friend, family, perhaps to ourselves. If we did that every time that we prayed and corrected something before we finish our prayer and reflected on what we're really saying, not just went through the motions of saying words that we've memorized, but think of what we're saying. The fact that we are saying these words to God, just like when we say the Our Father. And we say, give us forgiveness as we forgive those that we have trespassed against. Think of all of that. That means that we have to give forgiveness in order to receive it. So we need to listen to our prayers, mean our prayers, and seek to make our lives better by giving and asking for forgiveness. When we listen to the readings here in church, these are readings that are taken out because they have some meaning that the church wants us to receive. But sometimes it is easier to understand the meaning if we read more of what is there, the passage before and after those readings. We need not to take things out of context from the Bible. One thing that is probably one of the most misquoted, misused, not really misquoted, but misused because it's taken out of context, things from the Bible is, wives, obey your husbands. People want to take just that little piece and use that and tell their wives just to obey everything their husbands say. But it doesn't go on and get the rest of the story. The rest of the story also says, husbands, your wives are the most important thing you have in your life. Respect them. Honor them. If you do that, then you're not going to abuse the power if your wives obey. You have to think of the whole thing. And the Bible, all of it, is that way. You need the whole message. So it is important to study outside of Mass. To read, whether you are reading to your children, studying with your children, explaining to them. And as you explain, sometimes you get new insight into the words that are there. Because as you hear yourself explaining, the Holy Spirit gives you additional understanding. You can also attend Bible studies. Studies are very good, like the ones that we're having that start this coming week. The Bible Timeline. I took that course this last time that we had it. It is excellent. You can receive a lot of understanding from that. We're also starting Matthew this week. I'm not saying you have to go to one of those classes, but read the Bible, look at it, study it, whether it be an organized Bible study or with your family. These are the words of God. Share them. As you share them, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, joins you. He is there with you and helps you receive understanding. As you receive this understanding, think about your life. Make the reparations that you need to make. And then go to God, ask for forgiveness, and be willing to accept that forgiveness once you have received it. And again, think of what Danny in the story said. What is your life going to be like if you don't wake up in the morning? Make sure that you have taken care of any misunderstandings, any problems before you go to bed. Because we never know when we're going to suddenly have a heart attack and die. Or if something like heard about recently on the news, luckily no one got hurt in this instance, but a piece fell off of an airplane the size of a barbecue grill and hit in someone's backyard. If you were out in the yard and something like that hit you, you would die without knowing it, without getting a chance to ask God for forgiveness. So it's always important to be prepared, to make sure that we have asked God our spouses, our children, our families, for forgiveness for the things that we have done wrong. Because we don't know that we will be here tomorrow to ask for forgiveness. So we need to do it today.